Welcome everybody to the Daily Truth Report. I'm your host today, Noah, and our guest is Bo Polney. Bo, welcome to the show. Bo is an analyst of time. He analyzes the cycles that control our world, cycles of time, cycles from the Bible. He looks at them in particularly with gold, silver, cryptocurrencies. He's the founder of gold2020forecast.com. He's been featured on CNBC's Crypto Trader, and his videos on YouTube have been viewed over 5 million times. You might have seen him on Greg Hunter's USA Watchdog channel, which is where I first learned of Bo, or Bitcoin Binge channel, or many others, the Wild West channel. Bo is a very popular guest online, and he's been a featured speaker at dozens of industry conferences over the world. And today he speaks with us. Bo, welcome to the show.
Wow, thank you, Noah. That was beautiful and one heck of an introduction. So thank you, appreciate it. Thank you for having me here, and I look forward to speaking with you, Noah. So thank you.
Well, it's our pleasure to have you. A lot of people might be familiar with you. Some people may not be. I want to give our audience a brief history of how I came to know you and some of the things that I've seen in watching some of your presentations. I think it was late 2019 or early 2020 when I was watching one of your presentations, and you said, hey, watch out, something big is coming on April 20th. You never know in advance what that's going to be, but you look at the cycles and you can see that something is coming on that day. And I had just heard about you. I just watched one of your presentations, and I thought, well, I'm gonna see what this guy's all about. We'll kind of see what happens on that date. And sure enough, some people might remember that was the day that oil went negative. I believe, Bo, for the first time in history, it cost more to take delivery of a barrel of oil than the oil was worth. So that day was historic. It changed the world, changed the financial markets. And since then, I've been following you very closely. After that, a few months ago, you said, hey, we got another one coming. Watch out for September 18th. And we all marked our calendars and started watching. And, it seemed for a while like nothing was happening that day. And then all of a sudden, the alerts popped up on our phone, the Fox News alerts, and it said Justice Ginsburg had died. And once again, that has now shifted the course of our country. So, Bo, when I saw both of those two things happen, and it wasn't in hindsight, I was watching those in the future as you were talking about them. You've convinced me, and that's why I wanted to have you on the show today to talk about what you're seeing now. So your thoughts?
Well, I just want to preface those date calculations that I gave the world in advance, as you state. Again, as crazy as that is, Noah, I took biblical timelines and I did them forward into our year here, 2020. So, the dates that I picked, they're God's dates. So the point being is all glory to God, because all I did was interpret, historical patterns, but this is all a part of God's plan. And if you've listened to my presentations of past, Noah, I've described within the presentations and my PDF presentations that are free on my website. Again, the reason I do this is to wake up the world to the truth of Christ. But the point being is there is a prophet of like 2,600 years ago, Daniel, who foretold of all the kingdoms in advance. And this was a prophecy given to him by God. So the point being is the entire world, everything we experience spiritually, physically in this world, everything that we perceive today and tomorrow and yesterday, all of which has been written from the beginning thousands of years ago. And now we're heading into historic times here, because we are now starting the year 2020, okay? We are living in the time of Revelation, as I discussed in the Greg Hunter show, where the seals of Revelation are beginning to open. So we already have 2 opened, and we're in the 3rd seal right now. And that seal describes economic calamities that ultimately lead to the keyword of hyperinflation, as the world reserve currency falls. So that's in a nutshell, kind of where we can start, maybe.
Bo, that's fantastic. I'm going to share my screen and show everybody the presentation that you sent over to me. If you would, Bo, you believe that we are in the 7 seals right now, and you believe that some of those seals have already been broken. Tell the audience, how do you make the connection to coronavirus with the seals? I thought that was fascinating.
So when you read Revelation, it speaks about the seals of Revelation. There's only one worthy enough to open the seals, and that is the Lamb of God, the Lion of Judah. It is, in essence, Christ. So the 7 seals, each seal as it opens brings upon different devastations and calamities upon the earth, which ultimately lead to judgment. So we're not at the judgment part, we're at calamities right now. So the first seal, in essence of, corona is a crown. So Google the definition of corona. It's a crown. And then there's also a second part of first Revelation that speaks about in that part, not only is it a crown, but it's about the 4 horsemen, and the first horseman comes bearing a bow. Okay. He doesn't have an arrow, which means it's not dangerous. It's not as dangerous as one might perceive it to be, but it's a bow. And the bow basically describes Apollo. And Apollo is been drawn out in the Sistine Chapel. And this has happened several hundred years ago. So Apollo is also the one prophetically, or actually in the, how he's described as the guy that brings plague and disease. So in essence, plague or more disease is Apollo, and the crown around him is the corona. So the first seal of Revelation was opened by Christ, and that was the coronavirus. And if you read the detail about the first seal, or as the first seal is opened, this is really important. When the first seal is opened, the world as you know it changes forever. And if you don't think that's happened, turn the TV on, go outside. There's nothing normal about our world anymore. And when I talked about with Greg Hunter, that relates specifically to what we described, or what I described as a new era in time. So we're not in the new era as of yet. That new era takes full fold next year in April 2021. But the point being is, we're in biblical times right now, with the first seal already being opened, and then that led into the second seal. But they start to break. You start getting more and more events come upon the earth, and the second seal describes peace being taken away from the world. Well, would you agree with peace being taken away from the world, Noah, considering what's going on right now?
Absolutely.
So that really describes the second seal. The third seal it describes, as I said earlier, it's a financial seal. So it's a rebalancing of the financial system, because the world basically got taken out of balance. The world itself now is running on a paper-based fiat, meaning backed by nothing but faith and confidence, money. So, and this money can be printed to infinity because it is not attached to anything of value, meaning it's been detached from gold since 71. So really, and that allowed the money printers to print money to infinity. And if you don't think they're printing money to infinity, you might want to check what they're doing each and every month. All they do is create money to prop up the financial system, just like from what happened in the March crash. I think they printed maybe $3 trillion just to re-up the markets on the March crash. So all this money printing leads to big financial changes, because on a scale, one right now is weighted in one direction. When the scales tip, the exact opposite happens. So the third seal specifically describes the tipping of the scales.
So, Bo, we see, even in light of all this money printing, we see the stock market making new highs constantly. Do you see that continuing, or are we going to reach a point soon where the scale tips and we have another big crash? When's that coming?
So like I discussed the other day when I first put this presentation together, I think page 12 shows my cycle for the stock market. Page 12, basically what I see happening. And again, so the issue with the stock market is they are creating money out of thin air to prop it up. So that's why it's hard to predict price targets, because like even on the 7th, of October, I think last I checked, the market was up 500 points. What they're doing is they're creating money and they're pushing it into the market. So they're propping it up, but the cycle still holds. So cycles will still ultimately win. It's just the actual price targets I can't, guess precisely. But my best guess is we still have an up cycle for the stock market. I believe the stock market is going to rally into November, and then the cycle turns down in November and then starts heading down into next year. It might go up and down, but ultimately there's still another sharp, sizable crash coming. Now, the stock market itself, I believe, should top out somewhere around the election and then turn down. And then again, it might come back up, and then ultimately it's supposed to drop into the next cycle point, could be somewhere in the month of April of next year. So the general direction of the stock market is down after the election, and the price points, we'll see what comes. It could go as low as 15,000 on the DAP, but we'll see price targets. All I know is that after November, it's dangerous to be actually after the election, it's dangerous to be in the stock market. And the issue with that as well is when you're in the stock market, the stock market is fiat based, meaning it's priced in the US dollar. Well, what I see happening is the stock market is supposed to turn down, but also the dollar. So the dollar is supposed to fall. So if the dollar falls and the stock market's falling, you have a double whammy of basically anything and everything. Paper is dropping. And the only other thing that's going to go up in that case are going to be things that are opposite of it. Well, what is exactly opposite the dollar? Well, that's gold and silver. And also cryptocurrencies tend to follow the same cycle as well. So all I can tell you right now is that if the dollar drops, which is what the cycle's got, the dollar's going down, okay? So as of the 23rd, as of the Monday, the 28th of September, the dollar's got a down cycle for a long time. And that being said, if the dollar drops, say 20 to 30%, even if the stock market goes up 20 to 30% and then drops, the point is when you sell the stock market, you have to sell it into the dollar, which is now down 20 or 30%. So ultimately, all these paper assets become what is called toxic because you're always selling into the dollar, and that just dropped. So you ultimately keep losing value as the paper system is rebalancing. So this third seal is going to be very, very painful for the world financially.
So, Bo, for anybody watching this interview, for the average American, for you or for me, with limited resources, where do we put our money? It's gold, it's silver, it's cryptocurrencies. If you had to pick between those, is gold, silver, or cryptocurrency the place to be?
Well, again, I don't want to give financial advice telling people what they should do with their money. I can tell you that what I feel personally, I think everybody needs to pray on it and to make their own personal decisions. Because again, any financial decision is someone's own personal decision. But I can tell you what I personally feel, and when I look at the charts, I see gold going up. And gold is going to be a very, very strong asset because, again, gold is the anti-dollar. So everything the dollar does, gold does the opposite. So you can look at gold being priced in the dollar, or everything relative to gold, or everything relative to the dollar. But the point is they're polar opposites. So that is the rebalancing of the scales. So I like gold, but for everything gold is going to do, silver is going to multiply. And so because they've suppressed the price of silver so incredibly that I personally feel that silver itself is going to outpace dramatically anything that gold does financially. So that would be the difference between gold versus silver. They move together. Just silver, from a charting standpoint, is much more explosive. And then cryptocurrencies can be tied, I think, with silver. And I think some of the really good cryptocurrencies, there's a lot of them. There's thousands, I think, but there's a dozen or so that I follow close in my report, of which about 4 I really, really prefer. And those 4, I believe, are going to even outpace in the near term silver. So as good as silver is going to be, I think there's some really good cryptocurrencies that are going to even dramatically outpace silver in the near term. And I think silver and in the longer term is going to then further even explode, and then outpacing the cryptocurrencies. So that's basically my best answer to answer your question. I like all 3. I think silver and there's a handful of cryptocurrencies that I think are extremely they're going to be extremely explosive.
Bo, is $100 silver out of the question?
Oh no, because that's going to be an easy one. The first target on silver is a new all-time high. So silver, it needs to explode. And again, remember, every time silver explodes, guess what the people that manipulate are going to do? They're going to hammer it down. Why? Because they hate it. They cannot stand gold or silver. Why? Because it's real money. So they want the world to believe that their money is real money. And that when gold and silver go up in price, then they become money. And that's a problem for them. So the first target, again, for silver should be a new all-time high above 50. So somewhere in the $60 range, I think is a next near-term target, which is probably not too far away based on my cycles. And then once we get that, we'll probably get a pullback. And then once we get the pullback, then you're going to get to your $100 silver shortly thereafter. So then the gloves come off, and we're starting to see, very, very big prices. So because once it breaks free, as you're seeing, it makes a move, it pulls back, but once it starts making big moves, it's going to be harder for them to control.
Bo, you mentioned some cryptocurrencies, and I know you're not here to give financial advice, but all we hear about is Bitcoin. Are there some others that you like as well that are on your radar?
Well, yeah, there's a handful, like I said, of cryptocurrencies that I have in my report. I just try to keep that within the reports. I really don't want to put out the information on the ones that I really prefer. But again, there is a handful of cryptocurrencies that I think are really good. I think Bitcoin itself is the grandpa. So Bitcoin had its day. Bitcoin's still going to do very well in the future. So please don't think that it's not going to go up. Bitcoin's going to do very well. It's just that percentage-wise, even if Bitcoin went 10x from here, that's fantastic. But there's coins that are going to do 100x just because they're much less in terms of current price. So there's coins that are going to far outperform the performance of Bitcoin as Bitcoin begins to explode. There's going to be many alternate coins that are going to outpace it, because Bitcoin, in essence, is a great coin. It's too slow, and it's the first one that came out. So it will always be the gold standard, but the gold standard doesn't mean that it's going to be the only one that people are going to forever use.
The gold standard, kind of like gold and silver. It may do well, but there may be other ones that do better.
Well, exactly, because even if you look at the price of, if you look at how gold moves, right? Gold has nice days, it jumps up, but when silver goes, it's always outpacing the performance on a percentage basis each day of gold. But it does both to the upside and to the downside. So when gold falls, when gold falls, silver falls more percentage-wise. But when gold goes up, silver goes up more percentage wise. And that's the same for several and many of the alternate coins. There's some alternate coins that in a day, sometimes do 30-40%, which is insane if you think about what that means. Like imagine gold going or silver going 40% in a day. Yes, those days are coming, but not just yet, right? So right now, there's days where we're seeing, some coins do 10 on a bad day, some is 20 or 30%, and sometimes 40 or 50%. So there's these alternate coins, some of the cryptocurrencies, when they move, they really go aggressively.
And I want to tell everybody, Bo has put together these materials. We're gonna put a link to this up underneath the video so you can see this entire spreadsheet. Bo puts all of this out for free. He comes on this show for free. He goes on other shows for free. Bo puts all of this out there because he wants to teach and tell everybody what's coming. Is that right, Bo?
Well, exactly. There's at some point, God has blessed me. There's so many wonderful things in my life, but on the other end, unless, as I stated even in this presentation, I personally believe that I've given, have got some of this knowledge or received some of it to wake up the world. All I know is that it says very clearly in the Bible, if a watchman sees something coming and he does not warn his people or have warned the people, God will hold the watchman accountable. So I'm doing this to put the sirens on, to let the people know that there's economic calamities coming, there's financial calamities, there's all kinds of biblical events coming upon the earth because we're living in biblical times. So go through the presentation that we're looking at here, just understand that all of these slides, and as you start to go through them more and more, you're going to come to realize all the I's and the T's, it all makes sense. It's all lining up considering where we are in our world right now. So it's so important to understand that, that spiritually for 2,000 years, the prophets, the world has waited for this time point. We're blessed to be here right now and to not prepare and accept Christ as your Savior and know what is coming upon the earth would be terrible. So all I can do is everything that I can do is just to talk, to educate people, and to be as clear as possible. So again, look at the presentation. I don't know how much more clear I could be, and I've even provided some time points into the future as to what to expect.
Absolutely, Bo. We're looking at the chart right now. You've got a yellow flag on here that says U.S. election November 3rd, 2020. Of course, we all know that's coming up. Bo, the big question: and I know the answer, but tell the audience: do you see Trump winning a second term?
Well, absolutely. If you'll go to my prior presentation, see, when God does anything, he will always do it in his time frame. So what is his time frame? Well, it's written within the Bible that there's one perfect example of that time frame was used by Daniel to describe the 7 years it's called the 7 years of Daniel. Now, we're not in the 7 years of Daniel yet, but the timeline, it's a cycle. So when you use those precise time points, you get key dates. So how did I know about the April date? How did I know about the date coming on September 18th? These were prophetic biblical dates that I used within the Bible, specifically that of Daniel's timeline. So Daniel's timeline, the major part of it is a 1,260-day cycle. If you look at the chart you're looking at there, Noah, on page 12, if you look at the far left side of it, you can see the big black bubble, and it says November 8th, 2016.
Yes.
If that is day one, look, there's a little thin blue line right there that goes all the way across, and you can follow that thin blue line right above and right in the middle of the page above the number 4.
Mm-hmm.
It says in a blue bubble, 1,260 days. So from the election, the blue line is a 1,260-day line. It takes you all the way to April 20th.
Mm.
So that was Daniel's timeline from the election to April 20th, which is the start of the second Trump cycle. So Trump had one cycle, it's complete. The second Trump cycle began on April 21st, and that takes us all the way into November, December of 2023. So Trump is in a second cycle right now. So the probability of Trump being elected based on the cycle is whatever you want to call it. The cycle says it's 100%. We'll see, but Trump is supposed to be God's trumpet. So if Trump is the trumpet for God, he's marking the coming of Christ, the Savior, the Messiah. We're in the second cycle of it as of April 21st, 2020. So Trump's got an entire second cycle going into the end of 2023. So that's what I can tell you about the cycle itself. It's got Trump as the trumpet.
Bo, I've heard you talk about 2023 before as the end point of this second cycle. Of course, if he were to win again, it would take him through 2024. And you don't know what the future holds. You know where the cycles play out. But what does that mean to you, Bo? What happens in 2023 that ends the Trump cycle? Does that mean he doesn't finish out his second term?
Oh, I don't know. Only God knows that one. No,
Mm-hmm.
I wish I did, but I do not. And all I do is calculate time. So that is what I do. I wish I could see the future, but I don't know.
But that's when the cycle ends. Is that right? 2023.
Correct. Exactly.
That's right.
Yeah. We have that. I'm not sure what page that was on. I think it was a little later on this, but yeah, it's. I know there's 2 time points. I believe. Let's see. Go a little. That's that time there. It's on page 28.
28. There you go. Now, Bo, I want to jump down. There's, we talk about the election and that's important, but you've got a big timeline on here. You've got the return of Christ on this timeline. There it is right there.
Yeah, how crazy is that? Is that insane? When I discovered that pattern, I'm like, wow, there's like I wrote at the top there, this is God's 7,000 year cycle that was written from the beginning so that you will know that God is God, the creator of all things. There is no way that all the events of this world could have even transpired unless the whole thing was written from the beginning, including all the kingdoms that have been on this earth. So that timeline blows me away, considering that it's 4,000, and then we know that cycle that we're showing you right there, the 421 cycle, Noah, right? That's the cycle also that we saw in the stock market, the 421 cycle. Remember the chart that we had on the stock market on the Dow?
You had 421
and the 421, 124, 421, and so it's a backwards forward cycle of 421, 124.
Bo, why are those numbers important? What's the connection between the 4, 2, and 1? What does that mean?
I don't. That is just for whatever reason. That is God's. That is how He does His math. But in essence, how it works is 1 + 1 is 2, 2 + 2 is 4, 4 + 4 is 8, 8 + 8 is 16. So that's how the math. So that's why it's a 1, 2, 4 cycle. But the 1, 2, 4 itself adds up to 7. 7 is a cycle is a circle, and everything is a circle. And so the number 7, in essence, creates a circle, and that creates a cycle. And that's, in essence, how the whole thing works. As crazy as it sounds, that's why there's 360 days in a year, because that creates a circle. So it's all about circles and cycles. And the essence of it is the 421 cycle depicted the stock crash that we just saw in March. You depicted the stock crash of 2018 as well. So if you look at the cycle, go to, we're just on that page 12. There it is. It's the 1, 2, 4, 4, 2, 1 cycle.
Bo, we had that.
And you'll see the last 2 crashes happen. See, the crashes happen when you count backwards on the 1. Mm-hmm. So it goes 4, 2, 1, then crash.
And each one, Bo, has gotten progressively worse. And the upcoming one that you have possibly on or before July of 2021, that's the lowest point on this chart.
Right. And then the cycle still, the longer term cycle, I still have going down into the year 2022. So I don't even think that's the bottom.
Mm. And
So
what
we'll
is
see.
that?
My point being is after the election, being in the stock market is dangerous. Period. It's dangerous. Being in the stock market after the election is dangerous. Okay. I don't care. All I know is that you have to hold real assets. That's what I personally believe. And real assets being gold, silver, and yes, and cryptocurrencies are going to tie in directly to the money transfer. Go ahead.
Well, when Trump won in 2016, we saw a huge rally up, and that's in your cycles on this chart. But your cycles don't show that happens this time. Why do you think a Trump win leads to a fall?
That is just a cycle that I have right now. So it has nothing to do with the chart right there. I have daily cycles that are based off gold, silver, and the dollar. And my daily cycles indicate a rally into about roughly the election time point, and then the markets turn down. Could the markets rally continuously? Yeah, can they go higher? Sure, they could if they continue to print money, but we're still going to have some kind of financial calamity in November into December, and then again next year. So we'll see how it plays out, but the dollar is directly tied into it. So there's going to be a lot of overhead resistance for anything paper, meaning dollar and stock markets after the election. And so I don't know. I can't tell you what events are going to play out. But if you think about what's going on in the world, right, you've got, they printed all this money. The elite have, obviously in the stock market, people with money are still making more money. But, think of how many businesses are out of business, right? How many businesses are out of business? And then the employees that all facilitates. So these people probably aren't paying rents, and so there's, and right now you can't evict people. So all this is going to come to roost at some point, and where it's going to come exposed that, that people are people can't make rent payments because they can't make rent payments, and landlords are now having difficulties making their mortgage payments. And I don't know how any of this is going to end well. There's just an impossibility. And then annoying from a spiritual aspect, we're in the third seal. So this is the black horse. This is economic collapse. This is where, price, this is the time point where the financial elite that have controlled our world for generations lose control.
Bo, this is really important. I want to take a moment to talk about this third seal. You say this is where we're at now, or where we're headed into. What can people do? What's the wise course of action? Is it to store up a bunch of food now, or is it to maybe get into those real assets, the gold, the silver, the cryptocurrencies, so that you have money to sustain yourself during this time?
Well, again, those are personal decisions. I talk about the three things that you really need. Number one is faith in Christ. You need to accept Christ as your Savior, as our Messiah, because that's who he is. The other thing is prepare with food and water. Those are critical elements as well, too. And then financially, yes, gold, particularly my personal belief will be silver, and yes, cryptocurrencies. In what percentage you want to put, gold and silver and cryptocurrencies, that's a personal choice. But when you've done that, at least you know that you've prepared. So I don't know that there's a right answer, to be honest with you. But if you've accepted Christ, which is number one, and then number two is financially, you've looked at, you've done something with relation to silver, you've done something possibly with relation to cryptocurrencies. You're there, So I think there's still time to prepare with a food side. So I think you can start, it never hurts to prepare. Always better be a month, a year, 2 years early than a day late. But based on the cycle itself, considering that, we're looking at the Trump cycle, as long as Trump is in office, I still think I believe that there is time to prepare. So I guess I hope that answers your question. So there's still time to prepare. I don't mean, getting the financial side of it, but food and water, and safe havens and things. That definitely, there's definitely time for that yet in terms of preparation.
And so important. This is not a fear-based presentation. This is a watchman on the wall presentation, telling people to get ready, get prepared, and that may look different for each person. But Bo, you're giving great advice to people, and in a big sense, saying it's time to wake up a little bit.
No, more than a little bit. We're here. We're in prophetic biblical times right now. You're staring at it in the face. Go step outside and you're feeling it and you're living it. Okay. The fact that you cannot go to any grocery store or any public venue without having a mask on your face when the virus is virtually non-existent, at this moment in time, because it's warm at this time of year. But because an election's coming up, they're pushing it. Everybody hook, line, and sinker to have them to buy the lie, just because an election's coming up. So you're seeing evil push their agenda on the world to scare the world. Okay, well, what does evil do? What is Satan's agenda? Kill, steal, and destroy, to scare you. Okay, so if you're scared, it's because you are listening to Satan and his agenda, period. And if you believe in Christ and know who Christ is, what is there to fear? Right.
Yeah.
So you need to understand, you kind of got to think about, the reality of things. And again, you're right. This is not a let's scare everybody, because what did I say a minute or two ago? You have time to prepare for this. Okay. So as I love the analogy of standing on train tracks, if you're standing on a train track right now, having lunch, you're fine, because the train's not going to hit you for a couple more years yet, maybe 3. My point being is, but you should not be standing. You should be busy doing something. Get busy, because the clock is ticking. And when the second Trump cycle is nearing its end or coming to an end, I hope you've prepared, because you've had years to prepare. Again, we're not scaring you. I'm not trying to scare anybody. I'm sounding the trumpet, just as Trump is doing. He's sounding the trumpet, of the second coming. I'm sounding the trumpet to tell you problems are coming upon the earth, and we're in the third seal, the third horseman. The fourth horseman's coming, which is plague. So if you think you're in a situation of plague right now outside, you ain't seen plague. You ain't seen biblical. You have not seen biblical plague. Biblical plague was the bubonic plague, which killed 25 million, a 1/3 of the European population. Okay, that was biblical plague.
Bo, I've been saying it for a while now. This coronavirus seems like the test act, the warm-up act. It feels like the introduction to something. This is not the main event. The main event is still coming, is what you're saying.
Exactly. That's exactly what I'm saying, because we're not in the third seal. Read with the third seal. It describes famine, death, pestilence. Okay. Yes, people have died. But we don't have crazy numbers of deaths. Okay, 100,000 or 200,000. That's not biblical plague. That's not pestilence. Okay, we don't have famine yet. As much as yes, there's people out there that are hungry, but we don't have worldwide famine yet. So, and then what you're showing right there is on page 24. Again, this is Daniel. This is Daniel that wrote the 1260-day prophecy, right? The 7-year prophecy, 7-year Daniel cycle. Daniel gave to Nebuchadnezzar this prophecy that described him, King Nebuchadnezzar, as the head of Babylon, of gold. But then there was Persia was to rise, Greece was to rise, then Rome was to rise, then the papacy was to rise, and then the USA was to rise. All of this was given to Nebuchadnezzar 2,600 years ago. How does that happen? So again, it's just, there's no way that these things are random. And that is why I say, it's why I joke up the word coincidence, because nothing in this world is a coincidence when God's involved.
Boy, I want to end the interview with talking about arcs of safety. But before we get there, one more question, and this is your cycles look to the past, they look to the future. Something you talked about with Greg Hunter, and it's going to sound crazy, but where do you see the whole alien dialogue fitting in? You can't turn on the TV anymore without seeing Ancient Aliens on TV or any of that stuff. Take a minute and tell us if you see that fitting into the future cycle.
Right. If you scroll down a little further, I think it's one of the latter pages there I show about the aliens. And I think it's, keep going lower. So right there it is. I think it's on page 35. But basically, or in a nutshell, to kind of keep it simple, Revelation 13:11 talks about an image of the beast. Okay, so the beast itself is the Vatican. The image of it is the United States, if you can see that right there. So you see how they're, the White House is identical to the Vatican. So the image of the beast is the White House. Now, in Daniel, they talk about, where the feet, where it's clay and iron don't mix. So in other words, Satan, evil, is trying to mix and combine the White House and the Vatican. So they're trying to unite it into one, but it says that it'll never work in there. They're going to try to get them to mix and become solid as one. And that's so now to do that, it's just, you have to bring in a third entity of some sort, which would be alien. And how this plays out, I have no idea. So please don't use this as truth. This is my best possible interpretation, but it's somehow related that when aliens show up, and again, it's interesting because remember, if you go to, I think it was the 71 or 70 Olympics, Google it. In the 70 Olympics in Los Angeles, they actually had a spaceship come down at the end ceremonies, and they had an alien come out and the whole thing. So this was in the early 70s at the Los Angeles Olympics. So the aliens themselves, again, biblically, the Bible talks about a great deception and a great falling away. So falling away would mean that majority of the world, because God's remnant will be on the world, but a large portion of the world will buy the lie. And the lie is going to be something related to the fact that there is no God. That's the bottom line. Somehow it's going to come in that they created man, or they were involved in the gene splicing between that, somehow, some way they're going to state or be an authoritarian figure, and the world's going to buy it, that they were involved somehow in man being here on this earth. And therefore, if that is true, guess who you don't need? God.
Exactly.
Right? Because there is no God, because they ultimately become the gods. And then somehow they get the tie-in with the White House and the Vatican all pushing the same agenda, and then it ties in with and the ultimate push will be in connection with Allah.
Well, and Bo, this is not far-fetched. I mean, some people may be looking at this thinking we've taken a big left turn on this presentation, but you can go back to Ronald Reagan talking about this very concept. There's you can also YouTube that. Ronald Reagan talking about the one thing that could unite the world is some introduction of aliens and having a common enemy. And so that was probably 20 years ago. So
well, and then to cut you off for a second, just I think go up one page or two, maybe. I think it's I had here in one of my other presentations, but there is actually, I think it was Bush. It's one of the links there. I think it was, go lower actually. Maybe it was below that one right there. I think it might have been that one, or I might have cut it out. But there is one presentation where I think the prior one, where we talk about where Bush actually talks specifically about the New World Order, right? So that's tied directly in with that, because that is the agenda, right? And so it's a uniting of the world, because that takes you back to biblical times, right? Why was the world disseminated, and why are there different languages and colors across the world? Because in biblical times, thousands of years ago, they tried to build the to heaven. What was it? The Stairway to Heaven.
Mm-hmm.
And then, so they so what was that called? The
Tower of Babel.
Yeah, Tower of Babel, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so that Tower of Babel was basically was created because of the flood on earth, and Satan didn't want God to ever flood the earth again, so he's building the the Tower of Babel up to heaven. And then if you look at the Tower of Babel, that ties in with the appearance of the UN of the United Nations building as well too. So, and then that ties, and then you can keep going down the rabbit hole and going down the rabbit hole, and all you find is evil. So it's just, I think it's so not important to stare down the rabbit hole all the time and just, search for the light, and not to be illuminated, but search for the light. And who is the light? God says, I am the light. I am the way, the truth, the light. No one comes to the Father but by me. So that's it. So search for the truth, search for Christ, and you don't need to worry about the rabbit hole, because the rabbit hole is real nasty. There's nothing good down there.
I love it. Bo, let's wrap up talking about the arcs of safety, because that's a good note to leave it on. Tell us what that means and how you see this coming about.
So the arcs of safety, the best I can describe is, look at what's happening in some of these major cities right now, these Democrat-run cities. Look at New York, look at Chicago, look at, what else is there? The one here, Portland. Would you want to live there? Seriously? No. Look at Los Angeles, here in California, right? You can't go to Los Angeles and look under one bridge and not see 10, 20, 30 tents. There's thousands and thousands of people living under every single tent, every single bridge in Los Angeles. Mm-hmm. There's drugs and needles everywhere. If you have a spiritual, if you believe in God, people are just not, I repeat, not going to want to be a part of this. So all you're seeing right now is you're starting to see an exodus of people out of some of these cities. Well, that's not going to stop, and it's going to continue. And yes, the cities will remain, but you're basically going to have a separation of the world and God's remnant. And that's what's coming. And God's remnant is going to be safely tucked away in the arcs of safety. And so God will be protecting those people, his remnant, his bride, for his return. So his arcs of safety are no different than what Noah built thousands of years ago. Mm-hmm. And why did Noah build it? To protect his family of what was coming upon the earth. So why are these arcs of safety important? To protect your family of what is coming upon the earth.
And some of these are already in process, aren't they, Bo?
Yes, I do know Lois Vogelsharp has got the property, the land that she's starting to build. But again, they're supposed to be built with God's money. And what does that mean? It means you're going to be building these arcs of safety with gold and silver. Okay, well, you're not building these arcs of safety with $25 silver. Mm-hmm. You're building these arcs of safety with $200, $300, $400, $500 silver. Mm-hmm. So when you start seeing silver go triple digits, it's not backing down, and it's only going higher. These prices of these precious metals will be used to build God's arcs of safety, to build the arcs of safety for God's remnant, for his bride, for the wheat to be protected.
Well, let's just say here, Bo, we're recording this episode, this interview on October 7th, 2020. Silver is about $25 an ounce. Bitcoin is about $10,000. And we could see a whole lot of things change in the near future. So today is a marker, and I mean, I've gone back to this slide here that has silver at 25, then 60, then 100, then 600. Those aren't guarantees that's where it's going, but they're possible, aren't they?
Okay, God is a multiplier God. Remember that. When God moves his hand, things don't move up a percentage. They multiply. So what I'm showing you is the effects of what you should expect when God moves his hand. He multiplies things. He provides blessings to his church. When he moves his hand, he's going to bless his church. How does he bless his church? He's going to bless those who have prepared.
Yeah, love it. Well, Bo, thank you for your time today. Thank you for your time in putting together this presentation. I'm not a trader. I don't trade gold and silver and cryptocurrencies. But for people that do, you have a service, gold2020forecast.com. And I believe you have a 14-day trial period at a discount for anybody that wants to take a look at it.
Yeah, that is an offer that we offered the other day. It's good for, I think, for most good chunk of October here. So if you, again, I don't want people signing up for this service unless they are like traders and they know what they're doing. Because honestly, the most important thing is what we talked about is to prepare, to get what you need to do and not worry about trading. But again, if you've prepared and if you do want to know daily cycles for precious metals or for, say, gold and silver, for Bitcoin, the cryptocurrencies, some of the top coins that I prefer that I'm holding right now, then yes, you can get our Bitcoin index, and I cover all the details in there, including the daily cycles. And so for those interested, a little freebie here. Do expect a little bit of pause, maybe a little pullback in the next little pullback pause here this week yet. Okay. This week today being the 7th of October. But do be prepared for next week. Next week's looking really good for gold, silver, and cryptocurrencies. So, and then once the gold starts and silver and the cryptos begin to rip vertical, okay, it's going to be very exciting coming in here into November. There will be a cycle high come in, but the high is going to be pretty big. We're supposed to see a big move coming here. That's going to be followed by a sharp drop because again, they don't want these things to go up. So, but cryptos, gold and silver are going to, I like to use the word rip vertical. They're going to take off. They're going to go aggressively vertical here, October into November. And then it's going to be really exciting. And then the top's going to come in. And then off that top, it's going to be another sharp drop. So again, if people are looking, if you want this cycle time points for into the high there before the drop comes in, and then you can reload and buy back again, then again, that is what the crypto or the Bitcoin service is for, or the exclusive gold turn dates. But again, that is for traders. So otherwise, you don't need any of that. It's simply just buy cryptos if you're interested in that, if that's what your heart says to do, or if you want to buy gold or silver. And for those who don't have experience in terms of trading, or the point being is, if you want to get silver versus cryptos, buying cryptocurrencies, as you know, Noah, involves a learning curve of how to buy them, how to store them on wallets, and how to open up accounts. So there's many steps in getting involved with cryptocurrencies. On the other hand, those, the simple form of it is just, if somebody wants to buy silver, you called your coin dealer up, put an order in, send a wire or pay by card, and you're finished, or pay by check. So much less, a huge difference in terms of learning curve, cryptocurrencies versus buying silver. So that's what I can say about that. But again, it's a lot of this. We have excitement coming. Okay. So we have a little pause left here for a few days yet this week. Next week, we should see things, the lid starting to come off things.
Oh, fantastic. Bo, that's why we appreciate you, and a very, very respectable, honorable person. I don't know too many people that would put together a presentation like this, take an hour of their time to give it all away for free, even give us some free sneak peeks into what's coming. That's going to be what most people are looking for. If you are a trader and you want to get a lot more information from Bo, that's what his service is for. But he doesn't want you in there if you're not a trader. So Bo, we appreciate that. We thank you for your time, and we're going to watch these cycles, and we'd love to have you back on.
Noah, pleasure as always, and may God bless you and your family. And thank you so much for having me here. Thank you.